Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome everyone to Sufi Pilgrim's Progress post-Ramadan. So we're getting restarted. Before we start today, I just want to make one point, maybe several, we'll see, very clear. Okay? This is not entertainment. I know a number of people have been asking about or are enthusiastic about the Sufi of the Week series. We will do it, most likely, and we will try to enjoy doing it. But the point is not to entertain people. I'm too old at this point to be wasting my time on entertainment. My last Sheikh, Abu Qasim Bil Khairi, used to make the distinction between the Sheikhs of Tabarruk and the Sheikhs of Tarbiyah. For those who don't know Arabic, Tabarruk means barakat, blessing, i.e. good feelings, the Sheikhs of good feelings, and the Sheikhs of Tarbiyah, training. And he didn't want to be a Sheikh of Tabarruk. If that's what people wanted, he sent them off. Go see other Sheikhs, they have nice halls, you'll feel good in the session, and you'll go home and you won't be advanced at all. You'll be in the same place. And unfortunately, most of the spiritual gatherings I've attended have been of that sort. You go there, you feel some of the blessing, you feel good, you go home and you're in the exact same place. Nothing has happened. You haven't learnt anything, your hal hasn't changed, your rank hasn't increased. Spiritual recreation. Most of the activities, sorry to say, out there are spiritual. I want this site to be a place of real learning. I'm going to use an American term here because there is wisdom, believe it or not, in America. Okay? And it's called actionable intelligence. I want what you're hearing here to be practical, that you can work with it to make yourself better and your community better and your ummah better, etc., etc. Okay, that's the purpose. A practical education. Not like the ones we get in university where you leave full of theory and you haven't learned anything practical or useful. Unless you attend something like medical school and dental school, and still way too much theory and not enough practice in the schooling system. Okay? So let's get that straight. Now today's subject, it's not going to be a Sufi of the Week entertainment. None of us are going to be able to be Ibn al-Arabis or Jalaluddin Rumis or Hassan al-Basri. None of us. I don't think so. So when you hear about these very high-level Sufis, very elevated people, it's nice to hear about, but it's hard to use their example because we can't attain those ranks, usually. So the things I'm going to be talking about, hopefully, will be practical, and today's is ultimately practical. One of the most practical ideas, practices that you can undertake. And that subject is called acceptance. Rida in Arabic. A lot of people talk about acceptance, but it's not true. They don't really accept. It's just a theoretical construct. As soon as it goes against what they believe in, what they feel, what they like, they are in non-acceptance. Even if they say they believe in acceptance. So you say to someone like I did yesterday, I won't name names yet. He said, just brother, have some tawakkul. Yeah, we have to have tawakkul, but we have to do our part. That's the language of the people of non-tawakkul, who say we have to do our part. Astaghfirullah. There's always these justifications. Like the people that I knew in the previous community I was part of, who would say sometimes, I say, well, money isn't all important. Yeah, but, you need to have money in life. That means they're obsessed with money and greedy and worried about their financial future and not trusting in Allah. So be careful of people's language. Rida, acceptance. Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Let's start with a positive example. Okay. And its philosophical underpinnings. If I can find them. Yes. So I have an old friend who will remain unnamed. Try to keep things anonymous so as not to embarrass people. But he's an old-time friend, and he suffers from bipolar illness. So during his last manic episode, he made a really silly mistake. He's in the business of repairing musical instruments. Okay. And he was dealing with some fellow who's not very honest, and he saw his vulnerable position in a manic phase, and he said, "Can I have all of these parts for your musical repairs?" And my friend says, "Sure, what do I need? I don't need anything right now." He's in a very high state. And the guy took all his stuff that he uses to earn his living with. And when he eventually came down, he realized that he had made a mistake. He called the guy up and he said, "Look, I wasn't in my right mind. Can I have my stuff back?" And the guy said, "No, you gave it to me. It's mine." Dishonest bugger, really. So I told him, "Why don't you take the guy to court?" He doesn't want to. It's too much for him, and he's afraid of the guy and whatever. Doesn't want to take him to court. But ever since then, he's been knocking himself. Remember the sadistic superego? "Why did you do this, you idiot? You should never have given him your stuff." And every day spent hours in self-torture about the mistake he made. So much so, he was in so much psychological pain that he had to take a huge dose of an antipsychotic. For those who know it, it's called olanzapine, Zyprexa in Canada. And he had to take that just to calm down his sadistically critical inner voice. Well, I visit him about once a week. Last week I came there and he looked particularly perky, because those antipsychotics like olanzapine, they really knock you out. They take away your energy, they take away your motivation. Even his movement is slowed down, and he's looking more, partially at least, if not mostly, back to his normal self. And I say, "What's going on?" He said, "I think I found the solution." I said, "Okay." He said, "I was reading Marcus Aurelius, and we read books together sometimes." And I said, "Weren't we reading that last week? I found it kind of overly complex." Turns out that Marcus Aurelius is one of the Roman, sounds like a Roman name rather than a Greek one of the Roman Stoics. I'd known about someone called Epictetus, we'll read something from him shortly, who I ran into in a conference about philosophy and psychology. Anyway, he was reading Marcus Aurelius, and Marcus Aurelius was talking about the nature of acceptance, the importance of acceptance. No matter what happens, like we say in Sufism, fi kulli shay khairan, and everything is good. So here's one quote. Okay, these are the Stoics. Now, the Stoics are very popular in the modern world, especially amongst agnostics who don't want to consider the existence of God. Astaghfirullah, the highest level they can get to is Stoicism. And I've known people, a lot of modern day people who don't want to believe in God, they become Stoics. And there is some wisdom in Stoicism, no doubt. So Marcus Aurelius says, accept whatever comes to you, woven in the pattern of your destiny. Kada. This is just like Islam. Whatever comes to you, accept, if it is woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs. In other words, what is already happening is the perfect thing to be happening. The best of all possible worlds, as said one philosopher. Okay, so what is happening already is what is right. Not how you're going to fix what is happening to be consistent with your mental conceptions. What is already happening is perfect, is all right. So my friend read this, and then he started practicing it. And he said for 4 hours in the middle of the night, he was practicing, I accept what happened to me, I accept that I was ripped off, I accept that I lost all my parts in my musical instrument repair shop, I'm accepting. And he said at some point it broke. And the inner persecution stopped. And he said, I felt normal again. So he did what every psychiatrist tells you not to do. He stopped almost all his meds. Stopped the antipsychotics. Kept on the mood stabilizers. I encouraged him to stay with them. But he stopped it all. He's looking fine. But I'm sure his psychiatrist will have a fit. But he's like that. He's a bit radical. But that's not the point. We're not talking about psychiatry. We're talking about the attitude. So it seemed like he had cured an acutely depressive state through acceptance.
Wow.
Interesting. Most psychiatrists wouldn't believe it. No. You can't cure depression or mania with acceptance. Well, maybe you can. Now, during the same week, I had a call from an old client of mine. Again, this was a woman, but she won't be named. And I had treated her for several years before I retired, which is now 6-7 years ago. And for many years before that. She trained in a métier, a technical métier. Did a lot of work, a lot of training, has worked in that all her life. But she can't do it. She's never been able to do it. She has ADHD and anxiety and depression, and every time she fails at the job, she gets fired. So she calls me up in distress, even though she knows I'm no longer a psychiatrist, I'm not even her counselor, but I guess she trusts my judgment. And she says, what am I going to do? I'm on insurance, they're going to cut my insurance, and I have to tell her, Khadija, let's call her, Khadija, I've been telling you for at least 10 years, you can't do this. No, but then the mind gets into that. But I trained in this and I need to do it and it pays me a good living and all the justifications. The bottom line is she cannot do this job. You ever been in a situation like that? I have myself.
Yes.
Most people have been, you cannot do this job. What am I going to do? So I said, well, you'll find some other work. You'll go on social assistance for a while. She has 2 kids who are of working age who could help out. They've never helped out. There are men, and I said to her, because she is a believing Muslim, Allah will open the door for you, but you have to accept the reality. No, but this, but that, but this, but it pays me this, and I've worked in that, and I studied this, This is the nafs, not accepting. So Allah is telling her, now if I asked her, do you accept? Oh yes, Allah, everything I accept, I'm an obedient servant, as the Muslims say. No, you're not. You're not accepting. This is the trial you've been sent. So the non-acceptance actually can lead to suicide. It's one of the worst case scenarios, but I've seen it. Just not accepting that you can't do a job, not accepting that you've lost your partner, not accepting that you haven't gotten whatever degree you thought would make you happy. Any of these non-accepting can make you so miserable that you can contemplate and actually carry out suicide. So we have to be realistic in our expectations. Before I go on, and I'll give you some personal data on my own non-acceptance, because we all have it. Every one of you who's listening to me now has some areas where they're not accepting what they need to accept. Whether it's their weight or their personal strength or their finances or their health situation, every one of you has some issues that you're not accepting. Otherwise, you'd be so enlightened you wouldn't even be interested in these tapes if you were fully accepting. Very rare situation. Let me read you, before we go on, to the more Islamic aspect, if you wish. These are a couple of quotes also from the Stoics. Okay, these are the Greek, mostly, philosophers. Do not seek, this is from Epictetus. I ran into him at a philosophy conference. Interesting gentleman. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather wish that what happens the way it happens. Then you will be happy. Yeah, it's okay that he broke up with me, but if only he would have sat down and explained to me why, it would have been all right. Yeah, right. Of course it wouldn't. You didn't want him to break up with you. If only he had been nicer in his way of separating. Yeah, right. If only they had told us in advance they were going to blow up the store, I would have not gone there. Or maybe you would have. So, we won't get into the idea of self-destructive tendencies. But things are happening exactly the way they need to happen. And if you read some of the near-death experiences that are very articulate about this point, they'll tell you that every little detail had to happen the way it happened for your benefit. So if something happens and you don't like it, one of the things you can do is, if you're in the mode of acceptance, ask yourself, what could be good in this? In recent years, I've had a few people leave the orbit, whether it was in Sufi teachings or in personal relations, and, I felt betrayed, abandoned, whatever, all those feelings you can get. And then, when you think about it, and I saw some of it in my dreams, this too is the way it had to happen. And I realized that I was probably spared certain harms of this relationship by the other person leaving. I didn't leave. I didn't have the motivation to leave. They left. But this was for my own good, because God, Allah, always wants our good. So if people leave us, for whatever reason they claim they're leaving us, it's for our benefit. Always. I shouldn't say almost always. Don't be a relativist. Always. It's all for our good. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Oh, this is the same one. Okay. More Stoicism. So things are happening the way they should be. And if you think they should be otherwise, well, start rethinking your conclusions. Say, how could this be good for me? So your car stops working and you have to bring it to the mechanic. Oh, I need a car. You don't know what you may have missed a car accident because your car is in the garage that day. You may have missed your car getting stolen, like my neighbor the other day. Car stolen, and the police are keeping it for 20 days to process it. That's bureaucracy and others. So you don't know. It may look like it's bad, but it may be good. In Islam, we say nothing is taken away from you by Allah without it being replaced with something better. But sometimes that isn't obvious, or sometimes it takes a long time. So what are my own non-acceptance? And this is what I'm working on. Okay. So people who know me and my work, I've written 4 books. None of them have gotten any real traction. I know within those books are secrets, are wisdoms that can change people's understanding of life and relieve a lot of their misery, including the stories we just told about. There are aphorisms in the book that would solve those problems. But the books, very little interest. A few people have read them. My last sheikh wasn't happy with the book because I gave too much validity to other religions, but that's actually his problem, not mine. But, I don't get it. I set up a Sufi group. We have practices, the like of which I put together myself from all kinds of legitimate sources, and still very little interest. We run these videos on Sufism. People say I'm interested in Sufism. I don't know about it. Do these videos. I haven't looked the last time, but if there are 20 followers, it's a lot. They're probably less than that. Okay, so for me, all of this is very frustrating. But I have to also rethink my position and say, this too is from Allah. I've done my due diligence, really. I've worked hard at all of these things. The spiritual practice we do once a week is a product of 50 years of life. These talks are a product of 55 years of searching. They're not just talks that were written for me by some, political associate who wants me to speak on the video. These talks are a product of long periods of reflection and travel and experience, etc. They're chock full of wisdom, really. But Taylor Swift has millions of people paying all kinds of money, going hysterical about her songs. Very banal stuff, really. She's cute. The music is meh. As Hadi was saying, meh. Nothing not really particularly special, but millions of people, Swifties everywhere, they're following her and her boyfriend, her NFL playing boyfriend. That's another scam. These star players and Hollywood actors, as if they had something to teach us. In most cases, they don't. They're very good at their sport, but that's about as far as it goes. But then the advertisers want them to advertise everything from shoes to perfume to who knows what. Okay, so how do we accept the fact that we don't get a lot of acknowledgement and a lot of recognition? Allah knows. It's not easy. When I watch some of the people who get a lot of attention in the Islamic world for their teachings, for example, people like Hamza Yusuf, I see, no. These people have to be very careful. Everything they say can be dissected. Hamza Yusuf made the statement in one of the RIS meetings that not only black lives matter, all lives matter. Kind of obvious, I think. And the flack that he got from that is incredible. The last RIS meeting that he was talking about, he didn't say from the river to the sea that all the Palestinian activists wanted him to say. He didn't say from the river to the sea. They were ready to lynch him. Not literally, but they were very angry with him because he didn't toe the party line. So when you get up higher and higher, then you have to be more and more careful of what you say. I'm not really able to be that careful. People who know me, I speak my mind. What can I say? So if you get higher up, you can't speak your mind because people start getting upset right away. So that's my personal situation that I'm working with, the acceptance of that. Allah knows what's important is where we end up on the other side, and that overall we have a positive influence.
Ameen.
Inshallah. May God grant us that. Okay, I see the time is advancing. I did want to read a couple of Sufi statements, okay, because this whole series is about Sufis, about Sufism. Abu Umar al-Dimashq, that means from Damascus, said, full satisfaction, this is an awesome one. Full satisfaction is the disappearance of anxiety, whatever the judgment may be. The disappearance of anxiety. So when you accept what's going on, you don't have to worry. Allah knows. You know, that everything that's unfolding is unfolding in the proper way. You don't have to worry about it. Anxiety disappears. How many of you who are listening can say that they don't have anxiety? Whatever it is about health, about money, about their children, about their relationship, about their business. Anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. All of this is a sign of non-acceptance. So when you're worried about something, you can start asking yourself, you know, one of my best, this is a good story, maybe even a good story to end on. One of my best hals. Hal means a spiritual state, a state of enlightenment, if you want to use the Hindu-Buddhist term. I was in Jerusalem. I'd just become Muslim, and I got really sick overeating some delicious dessert, and I got very sick, and I was throwing up, and it was coming out both ends, and I fell down, and I thought on those iron toilet steps, if you know the Middle East, there are lots of places they don't have toilets and toilet seats. There's two, it's like an iron railing that you stand on, and I fell right on that, on my face. I lost consciousness and woke up, and I was fretting about. So the first thing I went, when they're complaining about the UNRWA of the Palestinian charity group, this was my experience with UNRWA. So I went to the local UNRWA hospital. I was in East Jerusalem. I went to the hospital, and I said, look, I think I broke my nose. Do you have an ENT guy? They brought in the resident in ENT, ear, nose, and throat. And as he was examining me, and I asked a few questions, I realized that he didn't know the anatomy of the nose. Wallah. This is a resident in ENT. First year medical student should know how far the bone goes, where the cartilage starts, what the structure of the nose is. You study that in first year anatomy. He's an ENT resident, specialized. He doesn't know the anatomy of the nose. That was enough. I was freaked out. I ran over to the other side, to the Jerusalem hospital there on the Hebrew side, and there was an Irish ENT guy, and he understood. But anyway, even after he saw me, and he said, I'd just leave it alone till you get back to Canada. And I was worrying, I'm going to need I'd already had nasal surgery, going to need another nasal surgery, and it's going to be painful, and I'm going to have problems with jaundice afterwards, and I'm worrying and worrying. Something happened. And they said, what are you worrying about? I don't know, somehow the idea came to me. What are you worried about? I dropped the worry, and there was infinite. MashaAllah. Divine consciousness came in after I dropped the worry. So worry is, and a lot of people spend a lot of time worrying. It's not only useless, it's harmful. Once I dropped the worry, I was in this beautiful, beautiful spiritual state. I wish I could. Sometimes I try to do it nowadays, but we have to work more on that. Drop the worry, drop the anger, drop the fear, drop the desire even. And that's acceptance, and wonderful things can happen, really. Awesome things can happen once you drop those. Fear, worry, anger, desire, I think those are the four principal ones. There's also laziness and agitation, but those are the four principal: worry, anger, desire, and fear. If you can drop those, get into a really beautiful state of consciousness. I wish all of you to have that experience.
Ameen.
I'm trying myself to have that experience on a more regular basis, and all of that has to do with acceptance of the here and now, and acceptance of the future as well. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, salamun ala mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. And next week, inshallah, I hope we'll be ready to give a little talk about Abu Bayezid Bastami. We'll try to cover a few different Sufis in a cursory form. I'm not an academic, thank God, so we're not going to give you every detail of what exact city he was born in and what neighborhood and who his grandmother and his great-grandmother was, but we'll try to cover the essential, and he's one of the great Sufis, Abu Baizin Bastami. Look forward to next week talking to you about that. Al-Fatiha. Amen. Whoops.